Arch Advocate Show. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for tuning back in. Why am I talking like this? Hey, listen, thanks for hitting subscribe, man. Seriously, on the YouTube show, on the podcast, either one. If you're listening on the podcast, on your phone or whatever, there should be a subscribe button. Please hit that button, right? It all has to do with the algorithm. It's the least you can do. It's free, and it's very important. So please do that. Thank you so much for doing that. And thank you once again to the Patreon supporters and the folks who support, dropping little tips on PayPal. Every little bit helps. If you're watching on YouTube, you may notice that I have a new shirt and a sweater. Thanks for the Christmas presents. You know who you are. Look, choose your battles, right? It's called the non-aggression principle. This was something that Owen Benjamin touched on yesterday. That like everybody knows like when a fight is about to go down. When you're walking down the road, right? Like you're walking down the street with your family or whatever, and you look forward and you see like some drunk guy or some tweaker having some sort of weird tweaker episode. What do? Right? You don't run up and start beating the crap out of that guy. You get off the sidewalk and you go to the other side of the street. Right? Why is that? Is it because you're a sissy? No, it's not. It's called self-preservation, right? If you get into a fight, then no matter what happens, even if you have a resounding victory, meaning like you win in such a fashion that like the other guy doesn't even get a single hit on you, you will still suffer, right? Best case scenario, you're going to have bruised knuckles. That's the best case scenario. You're going to bruise and sprain your knuckles, and your hand isn't going to work for a week and a half. That's the best case scenario. No matter what happens, in the best case scenario, you are going to be crippled for a week and a half. So, you crunch the numbers real quick in your head. Like, is this really a fight that I need to participate in? I've got kids here, right? I have to go to work tomorrow, and when I go to work tomorrow, I'm going to need to use both of my hands, right? So you do the calculation, but at a certain point, and in certain situations, like, you know what it's like you remember being in high school or maybe college age, whatever, like, you get into a battle of words with another dude, and it escalates and it escalates and it escalates, and it may even go to pushing and shoving, but even at that point, like, okay, we're just pushing and shoving now. But at a certain point, inside yourself, or you can see it in the other guy, it's like, oh damn, it's on. And at that point, you know that you need to commit to that battle and start swinging and get in there first. Don't do that. I don't even know where that myth of like, well, I'm just going to wait, I'm going to let the other guy swing first. It's like, no. No, I'm looking to win this battle and get it over with as quickly as possible, because a fist fight can very easily end in death. Very easily, and it happens all the time. As a matter of fact, there's way more deaths due to fist fights than there are guns in the United States every single year. Right? So it's like, look, I need to get to this guy's jaw. I need to ring that bell on his jaw and get him to go to sleep so I can get the hell out of here. Because I'm in danger, and when that moment is. But we, as civilized people, we know, like, we're not going to commit to battle until it is absolutely clear that there is no other way out, right? The non-aggression principle. The non-aggression principle is an ethical stance asserting that aggression is inherently wrong. In this context, aggression is defined as initiating or threatening any forcible interference with an individual or an individual's property. In contrast to pacifism, it does not forbid forceful defense. Right? That's the idea of the non-aggression principle, and that is something that is uniquely Western. Right? Basically, the easiest way to say non-aggression principle is don't start shit. And for my Christian audience, I'm sorry. But come on, like that word, the S word kind of belongs there. Don't start shit, and then there won't be shit, right? Don't start fights. Like, if you have a neighbor, right, and your neighbor, like when I lived in San Diego has a very high Latino population, and Mexican folks, they likes to party, all right? Quinceañeras and you know, other kinds of birthdays and holidays and, you know, Cinco de Mayo and like all these other holidays. Like, Mexican people are a festive people, for sure. I love me some Mexican holidays. Like, this is, I'm not going on some racist tear. Like, these are the people I grew up with. Like, Cinco de Mayo is something that I look forward to very much every year. Not because I really care about, you know, what it actually means. It's just, it's like St. Patrick's Day. It's like, this is the party, right? Been waiting all year for this party. There's a lot of good food, a lot of happy people. There's adults having fun. There's kids games. There's bounce houses. Like, yeah, it's fun. But you know, if you have a Mexican neighbor, eventually that festive nature is going to encroach on your ability to fall asleep, because Mexicans are very loud when they are festivitating. What would be a wrong word to use there? When they're being festive. And you have a choice at that time. It's like, you can either realize, like, okay, this is 2 or 3 times a year, and this is one of them. I can either just lay here, you know, and ignore it. We'll just let the people party. They're having a good time, right? Or I can go over there. I can knock on the door, say, "Hey, brother, can you turn it down, man? My kids are sleeping, and you know, and I've got jury duty tomorrow, or whatever." Right? You can do that, or you can be a real asshole and go over there and bang on the door. "Hey, man, you gotta shut up." You can be super aggressive, right? One of those, you know, one of those examples will most likely result in a fist fight. And so you purposely season your own language. If you choose to go over there and ask your neighbor to keep it quiet, you're going to watch your mouth, because you don't want to start a fight. You know, you do want to go to sleep, but you don't want to start a fight, because it's not, the payoff isn't worth it. That's the thing. That's the whole thing with the non-aggression principle. Is like, I'm not going to start anything unless the payoff is enough. It has to be, you know what I mean? If somebody's being loud, it's like, well, I can take this one on the chin. It's not that big of a deal. I'm not really losing anything here if I let this guy party on. And maybe a couple of weeks later, when we're all hanging out and having beers, I can be like, "Hey, bro, you know, next time, is it cool if you maybe give me a heads up, because, you know, maybe I can take my family out and we can go camping or something, and that way everybody's happy," or whatever. You know what I mean? You can be a little bit more diplomatic in it. What you're seeing when you look around, you're seeing the non-aggression principle being violated, and that's a problem. We've talked a number of times before on this show about escalation. Right? It's one thing if you know, like a politician says something stupid or does something stupid or even violates the Constitution, like the way that the Patriot Act violated the Constitution. If it was a one-off, that would be one thing, right? But when it's one thing after another, and that in its sequence, things keep getting worse and worse and worse, and more severe as they go, right? When you have politicians talking about, "Oh, we need to embrace socialism." Listen, socialism is communism without the ability to take your things by gunpoint, right? But the end goal of socialism is to get to the point to where we can take your things at gunpoint. Do you understand that? And so when it's escalating, that's something that you need to keep your eye on. And not to dwell on it or get all twisted about it, get all stressed out like, "Oh God," right? Look, at the end of the day, evil never wins. Good always wins, right? And I want to talk about this because this is one thing. I'm and forgive me if it seems like I'm bouncing around a little bit. It's like I'm carrying these two different thoughts that go together at the same time. So hopefully I can tie this all in by the end. C.S. Lewis in the Screw Tape Letters starts off by making an observation that, like, when it comes to demonology, there's really there are three types of people, but really the overwhelming majority, and it's like 99 point, not with 10 nines after the point, percent of people fit into these two categories, right? And then there's a third category, and I'll talk about that. But for the most part, there's really only two type of people, and that's when it comes to demonology, it's people who don't believe that there's demons at all and think that it's weird and stupid and should be ignored. And anybody who does believe that there are demons and angels and God and the devil and all that stuff, like, those people should be ignored. That's one category of people. Perhaps even the majority. I don't know. And then the second category of people is the exact opposite of that. And that's people who dwell on demonology to a very unhealthy extent, right? And C.S. Lewis makes the point in the Screw Tape Letters that both of those outcomes, both of those types of people, is what the demons prefer. They either want you believing that they don't exist at all, or they want you so focused on them that you become sick, right? Because it's like staring into the abyss. There's an aspect of demonology that it's like staring into the abyss, and then, you know, it's like the old saying goes, you stare too long into the abyss, and the abyss will eventually start staring back at you, right? That's very true, and I've seen that. I've seen people go crazy from staring too long into the topic of demons. But the third category of people are people who just sort of, you know, look at it, study it, but don't obsess about it. They just see it as like, well, that's just another thing that I have to deal with. It's kind of like driving a car on a highway. And I like this analogy for a lot of different things, so this won't be the only time that I use it. But like when you drive when you're driving down the road and you're driving 2 tons of, displacement, right? 2 tons of aluminum and steel flying down the road, like that's a huge mathematical undertaking. There's a lot going on in that scenario, but you're in that case, when you're driving down the road, you're not driving down the road thinking like, oh, all these other cars don't exist. Like there's just nothing to worry about here, right? I don't need to worry about that. Like I'm doing my own thing. Like you're not doing that, and at the same time you're not obsessing either. Like, oh my God, everybody, like each one of these obstacles, each one of these other cars, and the variables that go into, like, I don't know what kind of mood the driver is in. I don't know if they're drunk. I don't know if they're capable. I don't know if they're foreigners. I don't know if they're, you know what I mean? Like you're not obsessing over that either. You are that in the example of like how people trip out on demonology, it's like you are, like, almost everybody on the road is the perfect, the 0.00000 whatever 1% of people. Everybody is that on the highway. They're just people that are like, yeah, I recognize that that's a threat, right? But and I recognize that me being here, that I am also a threat to them. And I'm not going to obsess about it. Like I'm going to continue driving to work, and I'm going to think about my bills, and I'm going to think about my sick kid, and I'm going to think about like the projects at work that I have to do today, and I'm going to think about what the pastor was talking about on church on Sunday, or whatever it is that you're going to think about. You're going to do both, because you're going to be calm. You know what I mean? It's like like when you watch, it's funny, like when you watch a cat, climbing on a limb or something, and you think like, man, or when you see a cat like jump over a fence or something, and you think like, man, that cat really has no fear. And it's like, yeah, the cat's not even thinking about it. The cat's just doing it. It's just automatic for the cat. The sense of balance, you know what I mean? Like that whole thing is just like, to the cat, they're like, well, of course this is how it is. This is what I'm made for. Right? It comes naturally. It's like the same thing when you're driving a car. Or I was thinking like the other day, like if you ride your bike down a sidewalk, you're not thinking about the fear of falling, right? You're not getting afraid of heights because, you know, sitting on a bike, you're, you know, 5 to 6 feet above the ground. You're not thinking about that. But take that exact same sidewalk and lay it across the Grand Canyon, and then ride your bike across that sidewalk. You will panic and you'll probably crash and fall down the Grand Canyon because of the level of fear that you would have on the same exact width of sidewalk. You know what I mean? Like the circumstance would be different. And so what I'm getting at is, like, when you're observing these times, right, you can make one of two very easy blunders to make, and that is to ignore the problem altogether. Oh, they're just politicians doing politician stuff. Right? It's like, oh, no. These people are coming for you. Right? And they're open about it. They're walking around right out in the open now talking about, we want to make laws to compel you to turn in your guns, thus making you vulnerable to the government coming in with guns. You can get all kinds of weird on that. Oh, the government, these people would never turn on their own citizens. Like, okay, well, they haven't, because they know that you're armed. That's why they haven't. Because they know that, you know what I mean, if 10 federal agents or municipal agents or people with badges come to your door, it's like, brother, 2 or 3 of you aren't going to be going home tonight. And you better think about that before you come knocking on my door. That's why we have the Second Amendment. Like, the founders knew that. You know what I mean? And these people, I guess what I'm getting at is like don't ignore it. Don't be that first person that C.S. Lewis was talking about, where it's like they just deny the existence, and anybody who believes that is a conspiracy theorist, and they probably watch Alex Jones, and they probably believe in QAnon and whatever, just dismissed. That's where they want you. And the other place that they want you is over here, staring into the abyss of how crooked these people are. Because it'll make you sick. And that's also preferable. They don't care which one of those categories that you fall into, just that you do fall into one of those 2 categories. Be the third person. Acknowledge that it's happening. Don't stress out about it and twist over it. Get into your history. Get into the established books of wisdom that actually address this very thing. Right? It's all there for you, and you don't have to consume it all at once. You know what I mean? Like, most of us didn't grow up reading, you know, like, the civics class is like a thing of the past. Most of us didn't grow up reading the Constitution or the Federalist Papers or whatever. Like, we never really, like, came in contact with these men who wrote these documents, right? We never learned, like, well, who are these people? Like what was their motivation? Where were they coming from? Because it adds a whole new texture to the things that they wrote. And those things that they wrote is the template for our way of life. Get familiar with it. Don't obsess over it, right? Like, just understand that you are free, right? Like, you don't have to focus on the fact that there are people that are right now chipping away at your freedoms. What you need to focus on is your freedom, right? There's hope and joy and strength and courage there. Focusing on the fact that people are trying to take your freedoms away from you is staring into the eyes of the demon, right? Do the other thing. Drive the car, if you will. Now, a couple of things that we're seeing here. So I wanted to set that up. Like, I don't want the message that I have to bear. I don't want it making people more sick. I don't want it stressing people out. I've seen people who've made a very good living doing that, and I don't ever want to do that. That is never the message I want to convey. But let's, that being said, let's take a look at some of the things going on right now. I wanted to do a whole thing on George Bush dying. And I was going to start off like pointing out that like it is in very poor taste to speak ill of the dead. It's very bad manners, horrible breach of etiquette. It's just in poor taste. That being said, George Bush was a really bad guy. Really bad guy. Who was the guy that shot Reagan? You remember that guy? What was that guy's name? And the reason he said that he did it was because he wanted to get the attention of Jodie Foster. Right? Remember that in the 80s there was that skate punk band called JFA, Jodie Foster's Army, which is probably one of the greatest like band names ever. Like Jodie Foster's Army, right? JFA. But what was that guy's name? Was it Hinckley? Was it Hinckley? No, it was something else. Maybe it was Hinckley. But either way, like the week that guy shot President Reagan, like 4 days prior to that happening. I want to say it was 4 days or something crazy like that. 4 days prior to that happening, the guy who shot Reagan, he had a brother. And his brother was having lunch with George Bush. Just like days. And I'm sorry if I'm misquoting. Maybe it was like 4 months or something like that. But I want to say it was like 4 days. He was having lunch. The brother of the guy who shot the leader of the free world, the great negotiator, the Gipper, President Ronald Reagan, the guy who shot him, his brother. This is not conspiracy theory, by the way. Like if George Bush were alive, he was questioned about it. He's like, yeah, I had lunch with the guy, and we talked about whatever. You know what I mean? Like bananas. But and the problem with that is the problem with that particular, like, it's obviously there's got to be something there. You're the guy's brother who shot the president. You were just having lunch with the guy who was going to become the leader of the free world had he been successful. Right? Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here, people. George Bush was the head of the CIA. Like Brennan. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, how has this case not been prosecuted? Right? Like, that dude, George Bush, not a good dude. Right? And the only thing that, like, you can say good about him, well, there's a couple things. He loved dogs. Tucker Carlson made that point. Like, at first when I saw him making that point, I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard out of you, Tucker Carlson. But now I think I'm seeing the wisdom in it. I think what he was laughingly putting out there is like, there really wasn't very much good to say about this guy, other than he was very fond of spaniels, as am I. And the other thing that you could say good about him is, like, after he left office, he observed proper presidential etiquette, which is a fancy way of saying, like, he kept his mouth shut. He didn't talk about other presidents. You know what I mean? But other than that, like, that dude was bad. You go back into the history of Operation Desert Storm and the function of that, and why it is that we told the Iraqi people that we were going to come in and set them free, and then we launched a military campaign into Kuwait, and then we didn't go into Iraq, and we left Saddam Hussein in power. It's like, and a lot of people were tortured to death because of the United States. A lot of Iraqis. Those dead people their blood is on George Bush's hands. And you can there's all kinds of people that are like, well, it's hard to say what the right decision to make. It's like, no, it's not. No, it's not hard to say. It's real easy to say. If you stand up in front of the world and say, we're going to take out Saddam Hussein because, he's gotten too big for his britches and now he's murdering and raping people and we have to take him out. We made a mistake. We put this guy in power and now it's blowing up in our face and we have to go in and take that dude out. It's like, if you say that, then you go do that. Or you keep your damn mouth shut and you stay out of Kuwait. You do one or the other, but you don't go into Kuwait and then not do what you said. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people died because of George Bush. Innocent people, like, not American people, like innocent Iraqi people who were just like, like, hey man, hey America, can we get some help with our leader? Like this, you guys have put this guy in power, and now his sons are running around just raping everybody that they want to rape. Dude, Uday and Hussein, Uday and, is it Kusei or Hussein? Whatever, Uday and Hussein, whatever, the Hussein boys. Those two dudes were effing animals. Animals. Like, dude, okay. I didn't want to talk about it. Let me just explain this really quick. San Diego has the second highest Chaldean population in the United States. Chaldean is a fancy way of saying Iraqi Catholics, right? The Chaldean people, there's two major hubs of Chaldeans in the United States. And one of them is Michigan. Is it, I want to say Detroit. But it's Michigan and San Diego. And on a number of occasions, like I've had very close friends who were Chaldeans, people who fled Iraq and got into the United States as legitimate refugees, like real life, like they approached the United States. They said, "Look, if I don't get out of this country, these people are going to kill me. Can you please let me into your country?" And the United States said, "Yeah, oh yeah, come on in." Because like on paper, like from a legal standpoint, you are a legitimate refugee. Welcome, welcome. There's a lot of those people in America because of Saddam Hussein, right? And I knew a lot of these people. They were friends of mine, and they would tell me crazy stories about Uday and Kusei or whatever the other guy's name was. Crazy stories. Like they would just roll down the street, and if they saw a pretty girl, like they would send their guards out, and they would like kill the boyfriend and grab the girl and then take her back to the palace and then rape her and then just throw her back out on the street. Like just animals. These people were effing animals. And these accounts like that I had, these were from people I knew. You know what I mean? So I don't think that they would have any reason to. Well, maybe they embellish, but I doubt it. Like it's like the story on those people, the Hussein family is like that story I just shared with you. Like that's the like the least offensive story. George Bush left those people in power after telling them like we're going to come over there and remove you from power. He wasn't a good dude. And you know, it's not like I'm glad he's dead. It doesn't matter. Like he's been an ineffective human being for a very long time. Like if he was alive today, I would have the same amount of care about the topic. Like I don't care, right? I'm just saying, like as the nation mourns, it's like, dude, he was not a good dude. Like the only reason that it's appropriate to celebrate, this guy's death is because it's like, well, he was the leader of the free world for a while, and we do have pageantry and ceremony that we have to go through as a nation to honor. It's like, dude, you reached the highest office in the land. Good for you. So you get to be in the hall where they got his dead, rotting corpse right now. But anyways, not a good dude. But what I did want sorry about that. What I did want to get to was we're looking at what's going on in France right now. All right, and if you've seen that, we're not going to be talking about what you think I'm going to be talking about. There's a couple of dynamics there that may not have occurred to you. The people that are being beaten up by the police, if you notice, what do they wear? Right? What do they wear? You've seen it. You've seen that those protesters they're all wearing yellow, like traffic hazard vests. That's another way of wearing a uniform. That's another way of letting everybody on the battlefield know whose side you're on. We have not had people who've had that courtesy for a long time. We've got ISIS and all these terrorists in the Middle East. They don't wear uniforms, right? They're cowards. They don't have the courtesy to let you know, coming up to you, that they are your enemy, that they are against you, right? That's the whole purpose of wearing uniforms. It's so that you don't end up killing your friends, so that everybody knows what side everybody's on. These Antifa terrorists, right? Really, well, I guess they do sort of wear a uniform, the face mask and the black goth, whatever. But when you see this footage in France, you see these protesters, and I don't want to get into like these are peaceful protesters. It's like, what? To tell you the truth, we don't really know. But what we do know is that they've had the common courtesy to be, to identify themselves on the battlefield, if you will. That they are there protesting, and we see the police. Now, in all of the footage, all I can see is unarmed protesters. Right? I don't see... listen, the thing is here is it's very difficult to know, like, did those protesters, did they ask for it? Like, the footage that we're seeing, are we seeing 5 seconds after those protesters were hurling Molotov cocktails at the cops? It very well could be, right? Perhaps those people not only deserved the ass kicking that they got, but perhaps they asked for it. You throw a Molotov cocktail, you start throwing rocks at the cops, then when you get your ass kicked, like, dude, you petitioned for that ass whooping, and your petition was granted, right? That very well could be happening, but unfortunately, we don't know, because we can't see it. What we can see, though, however, and this is the thing, is let's give them the benefit of the doubt for the sake of this conversation. Let's give those protesters the benefit of the doubt. Now we've seen all kinds of different protests. We've seen the Occupy Wall Street protesters, where it's just a bunch of smelly hippies, a bunch of unemployed college graduates that are like, man, this is so unfair, man. These bankers have so much money and I don't have any money. It's like, all right, you are ruining the concept of protesting because you're being a little bitch. That's what Occupy Wall Street turned into. Maybe it started from a good place, I don't know, but it turned into Antifa. Right? It turned into Antifa, like, who are they're so interested in the feeling of virtue. Like, they don't actually want to be virtuous, they just want the feeling of virtuousness. So that when the President of the United States gets inaugurated, they go find a Muslim who owns one limousine that he scrounged and scraped his money all together in a big pot, and then went down to the bank and said, here's a down payment. I need a bunch of money so I can buy a limousine so I can make more money to pay you back and feed my family. And Antifa found that guy's limousine and lit it on fire. Remember that? So when people protest like that, it makes people like me say, well, screw protesters then. You get whatever's coming to you because you just virtue signaled. You did a complete 180, right? You aimed for the mark and you hit something directly behind you, miraculously. You tried to be virtuous and you lit the, you know what I mean? Like in your supreme moral virtue of, like, you don't like this new racist president, according to you, that you went and found a Muslim guy's limousine, the only thing that he had in the world, and you lit that thing on fire. God, the irony. The irony is so thick, you know what I mean? So, like, there's a thing in all of us, well, probably all, there's some part of a lot of us right now that are like, well, then screw protesters. But the thing about what's going on in France is, like, these people are protesting their president because the president, this is the thing, is Macron comes out and he's like, global warming, global, climate change. We need to raise the tax on gasoline, that very gasoline that you have to go buy in order to get yourself to work. We're going to make that gasoline prohibitively expensive. We're not actually going to cut off the supply, mind you. This is purely a tax. We don't really care about the environment. What we care about is getting more of your money out of you. And the Frenchmen, again, there's a lot of good French people, all right? There's a lot of assholes, but there's a lot of good ones too. But these people are like, no, we're not doing that, right? There would be no riots had Macron come out and said, listen, we really, really care about the environment. So what we're going to do is even though we don't have the infrastructure for green energy yet, we're just gonna put the cart before the horse, and we're just gonna say, well, you cannot purchase a certain amount of gasoline. As a nation, we're just not gonna buy enough crude oil for everybody. We're just going to have enough gasoline for truck drivers and taxi cab drivers and things like that. The rest of you can go F yourselves. But they didn't do that. They said, oh no, like, you know, you can buy the gasoline still. You can still hurt the environment, but we're just going to make you pay a lot more money for it. That's a very different, this is exactly why global warming or climate change or whatever lie title that they have for it nowadays, because remember, I'm so old that I can remember when it was literally called global cooling. That the earth wasn't going to burn up, it was going to cool off. And then it was going to burn up. And then that was disproven. So it was like, oh, it's climate change. It's like, what does that even mean? Of course the climate is changing. So the climate is changing, therefore you have the right to put more taxes on me. And notice this, right? Again, don't dismiss it and don't stare into the abyss on this. Just notice what's happening. This is how you know global warming, climate change is a lie. It's not a myth, it's a lie. This is how you know. One, they can't keep the name of it straight. They have to name it something new every 10 years or so because too many actual climate scientists come in and say, oops, here's what we found. Sorry, everybody. But Al Gore still gets to keep his $500 million. And the other way that you know that it's a lie is that their only solution, the Paris Climate Accord people, so Macron and Obama, that filthy devil, and the Young Turks, and you know, Al Gore and Leonardo DiCaprio, like their only solution, the only solution that they have is for you to be forcibly separated from your money. How is me paying an extra 3% in taxes gonna fix the environment? Somebody please explain that. Well, it's gonna go to research. Evidently it's not. Evidently it's going to go to purchase Al Gore a new home and Leonardo DiCaprio a new jet so that he can fly around the world and pontificate about whatever that is that they're calling it these days. That's how you know it's a lie. And the people of France are like, all right, enough. No more tax. If you have a solution for fixing the environment so that God doesn't burn us with the sun, I'm open to it. But this thing about taxing me more money, we're done. We're all done. We're not doing that anymore. What we are going to do is we're going to build a functioning guillotine in front of the halls of whatever your government is called. We're going to let you know, like, this is what we do. Like, because the French are crazy, man. They behead their leaders. You know what I mean? They have a long, glorious history of beheading their politicians when they get too crazy. You go back to Louis the 14th, right? And I'm pretty sure it was Louis the 14th. You know what the straw that broke the camel's back was? He made it illegal to be poor, right? Because the world has always been poor up until just very recently in human history. Like, everybody was always poor, so much so that nobody even talked about it because, well, of course everybody's poor, right? But France, back in Louis the 14th days, like, France was really having a hell of a time because Paris was huge. There was a lot of people there, right? The bigger the city is, the more poverty you're going to have. The more poverty you have, the more sickness there's going to be. The more sickness and poverty there is, the more crime there's going to be. Like, it's a problem. And the politicians, because they're just bureaucrats and they're out of touch, like, their whole thing is, it's like Marie Antoinette, like, oh, let them eat cake. Right? That's how out of touch they are. And this is the mind of politicians. Like, this is the mind of Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders and Jim Carrey and these kinds of people is they're doing the exact same thing that Louis the 14th did. He's like, oh, I got it. I know what I can do. I've got it. Like, eureka. I figured it out, man. I had this epiphany. It's like the Lord came to me in a dream. I got it all figured out. And I know what I'm going to do to fix poverty. Just going to make it illegal to be poor. Genius. I'm a genius, people. And the people were like, okay, like, you're so far out of touch. Like, we can't allow you to be a human being anymore. I'm sorry. We're going to have to send you back to Jesus. And they dragged him out into the square, and they stuck his head in the little guillotine hole, and they pulled the lever, and they separated his head from his body. And blood squirted everywhere because you've got, this thing called blood pressure, and when you open up a vein like that, particularly your two jugulars, blood just squirts everywhere. Like, it is gruesome. And at that point, all the other politicians realized, like, oh, I actually have to do work. I actually have to make sense. I am actually accountable to these serfs, these pawns, these little dirty people. These people are actually my employer. And then they started acting right. And when the French go to the front of the office building where Emmanuel Macron works, and they put up a guillotine, that's what they're saying. They're saying, Macron, you're doing a Louis XIV. You can't just fix the environment. If you believe that that's the main problem that the world is facing today, fair enough. There's a lot of people who believe just like you, but that's fair. But the solution isn't digging into my pockets and taking more of my money. My money and the environment are two things that have very little correlation to one another. You know what I mean? So we're going to give you a fair chance here. You need to straighten up, but just keep in mind, we, the French people, have a long, glorious history of chopping MRFers' heads off. And then another glorious history of, like, as soon as we do chop people's heads off, the rest of the politicians, they start acting right. You know what I mean? And the thing that I wanted to get at, the thing that I wanted you to notice in the riots is this, is like, look, those policemen that you see, right? Those are people that were given orders to attack their own citizens, and that's something that has to be looked at, right? Like in the United States, in the case of Antifa, we can see Antifa terrorists going up to old people in wheelchairs, pouring drinks on them and knocking their hats off of their heads. We saw that Kino Jimenez guy, that guy who's built like a fighter. And he goes up to a couple of scrawny teenage high schoolers and assaults them, right? Terrorizes these two little kids that could not hold their own in a fight with that guy. That's who those people are. And if the police were deployed to, say, like, the bike lock basher, Professor Eric Clanton, if the police were deployed on that guy and then kicked the shit out of that guy, I would be like, yes, okay, that is a justifiable, like, that person was a threat. That guy tried to kill another man with a bike lock. He deserves to be beaten to death by the police. He deserves it because he's asked for it. He asked for it because he attacked another U.S. citizen. That guy that drove his car into those people in South Carolina, it's like, yeah, pull that guy out of his car and beat him until he doesn't move anymore. Because he asked for it. You say, Pete, well, that's pretty severe. It's like, driving a car into a bunch of people is severe. Beating somebody over the head with a bike lock is severe. Kino Jimenez bullying a couple of scrawny teenagers is severe, right? And when it comes to, like, the cops being deployed on their own people, it's like, okay, everybody tread real carefully now. Because there's another side to it as well. There's a side of it that you have to keep your eye on, because there is something in all of us. Like, your instinct for self-preservation is a mother effer, right? You have no idea what you're capable of. Nobody really does, right? You are capable of horrendous evil because of your instinct to preserve your own life, right? And when it comes to policemen, it's like, okay, these people have a job. They have a job that comes with a great deal of authority and power. And that job entitles them to a monetary like paycheck every week or every 2 weeks or on the 1st and the 15th or however it is that cops get paid. But that's how they pay for their life. It's how they make their car payment. It's how they pay back their student loans. It's how they pay their insurance for their children. It's how they buy their wives nice things and their husbands. It's how they pay for their lives, right? And so there is something in them, that instinct to preserve that relationship that they have with their employer, who is the mayor, who is the city that they live in, or whatever. And when that word comes down, like in the case of Portland, where the mayor was telling the police, like, not only are you going to stand down, you are going to allow these Antifa terrorists to act in your stead. That's a hell of a thing. And no matter what is said, the fact is that those cops went along with it. And why? Why did they go along with it? Why didn't they throw down and say, you know what? I swore an oath, and whether I'm wearing this badge or not, I swore an oath to protect this town against these people. And if it costs me my job, and if it costs me my livelihood, if it costs me my freedom, I'm going to stand up against these anti-terrorists because I'm a policeman and this is what I swore to do. But no, they didn't. What they did instead is they preserved their own lives. That's what I'm saying, like the self-preservation, man, it's a mother effer. And you don't know like what you would do in that situation. You don't know. Nobody knows. But we can see, right? We can see what the Portland police did. They stood down and they went along with their mayor. You need to keep your eye on what's going on in France right now, because we don't know if this is like, if France, if Emmanuel Macron is deploying his policemen and his agents to start jackbooting, start kicking down doors and start terrorizing his own citizens, it's like, okay, well, that's the point in which the fight becomes unavoidable, right? That's the point where the people of France will rise up, or not. You know what I mean? Like that's the point where you're going to have a general in the army in the north of France and a general of the army in the south of France, and those two generals are going to have very different allegiances to Emmanuel Macron. One of them is going to be for him because he realizes that his paycheck comes from Macron, and the other one is going to realize that he's a patriot and he is beholden to the will of the people of France, and he's going to be against Macron. Like you see what I'm saying? Like that's how wars start. And so you need to keep your eye on it. Again, like don't stare into the abyss. Like don't be looking at the violence that you can see on TV or on social media and be like, oh God, that looks like civil war is going to break out. Yes, it does. It certainly does. It does look like civil war is about to break out in France. It does look like the European Union is about to form their own military for the express purpose, as they expressed it, to guard themselves against the United States. That's a recipe for war. Because we have military bases over there. Because we had to go over there and kick the shit out of everybody before. Because they were exterminating the Jews. That's why we'll never let them have their land back. They screwed up so badly that it's like, we will never allow you to be completely free again. Because you people, when you lose your respective poop, you try to exterminate the Jews, and then we're not going to let you do that again. You can look at that and you can stare into the abyss. And you can get all freaked out and all twisted up and all stressed out. Oh God. But you know what that'll make you? It will make you violent. Right? If you're looking at these things and your heart becomes hardened with hatred, hatred is a magical thing. Terrible magic hatred is. Hatred has the power to turn you into the thing that you hate. It's a crazy, crazy kind of magic. Don't look, when you're looking at these things, don't let the hate in. It will turn you into the thing that you hate. But instead, just look at it and see it for what it is and understand, like, this is human behavior. This is what is in the human condition. It's all part of it, right? And though it sometimes can take a lot of time, and though sometimes it can take tens of millions of deaths, cooler heads always prevail. Good always wins. And Jesus Christ is still Lord, right? Or you can do the other thing, right? The other thing is like I was telling you, I have a local friend here in this tiny village that I'm in who works for not UNICEF but the Peace Corps. And I was talking to her. I was like, "Man, you see this? Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel are trying to get the European Union to pay for a military, and the EU is clearly ruling Europe, and Germany is the head of the EU. So congratulations, Germany, you've conquered Europe for the third time." And she's like, come on, Pete. Aren't you being a little over the top there? Right? She doesn't look at it at all. Don't be that either. You know what I mean? Don't stare into the abyss and don't ignore it. Be the third person. Drive the car, right? Just pay attention. Keep your eye around you, but just understand, like, this is the journey. This is the journey that everybody's had to take. You know what I mean? Every generation has had their thing that they had to deal with, and this is ours. Acknowledge it, see it for what it is, and don't lose your mind and don't ignore, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's the last thing is, like, dude, the non-aggression principle. Keep it in mind, right? Don't go storming your city hall with bayonets and weaponry and whatever. Like, don't do that. Unless you know for a fact that it's time. Right? Don't engage in the fight until you know it's unavoidable. Remember that? Sorry about that. Remember that punch by Rufio that we saw? By the way, my friends Nelly and Aaron, I still want to talk to Rufio if he's open to it. But remember that punch by Rufio? Like, go back and see the footage. He didn't ask for that. Some guy came up to him with a collapsible police baton and struck him on the arm with a deadly weapon. Okay, when somebody is coming at you with a deadly weapon, then you know it's time to fight. That's your sign. Right? At this point, the non-aggression principle falls to the end of the principle where it's like, force, the use of deadly force in defense of yourself is absolutely permissible, right? And it's just situational awareness. Like, don't stress out about it, or you'll know when it happens. Just like when you were a teenager, right? When you were pushing and shoving with that dude, when you saw that he had that look, when that look in his eye changed, you knew. It's like, oh boy, here we go. Like, you'll know. So just relax. That's the show for today. Please support the show by hitting subscribe. If you want to keep the show going using some dough, going to archavocate.com. Oh, also, if you're listening and you know anything about Scribus, there's this software that is used for formatting books, and I can't figure the damn thing out. Right? And not how to use it. I don't know which one to download. If you are Todd Milligan, if you're listening, like anybody who's that Sven in Poland, like, listen, if you know Scribus, if you like know how all that stuff works, please write into me. I need to get these books that I've written formatted, and I need to get them out. So and I've got some free stuff for you, like my first one about gratefulness. I'm gonna make that free to everybody. You can just download it. You can have it on Amazon or whatever. I'm trying to get that formatted so that I can get it out. But dude, my phobia of technology is really kicking me in the ass. So if you guys can help me out with that, I would really appreciate it. If you want to support the show with money, hey man, support what you love or else it goes away. That's how it works. Arch-advocate.com. You can do PayPal. You can become a monthly patron. Give a couple of shekels a month if you want. Whatever, it's up to you. Thanks for tuning in, and I will talk to you all. Remember, take it easy, folks. Just calm down. Acknowledge. See it for what it is. Don't get stressed out about it. And don't look away from it either. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.